Thank you very much. Good afternoon. At this time, I'd like to call to order the June 15th, 2023 regular meeting of the North County Transit District Board of Directors. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. In addition, you must register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak to clerk@nctd.org. I will now ask Suhail Rodriguez, NCTD's uber efficient clerk of the board, to call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board Member Weiss?
Here.
Board Member Hinsey?
Here.
Board Alternate Melendez?
Here.
Board Member White?
Present.
Board Member Desmond?
Here.
Board Member Drucker? Board Chair Edson?
Present.
Board Member Jenkins?
Here.
Vice Chair Bob Patel?
Here.
That completes the roll.
Thank you very much. Director Melendez, thank you for filling in as alternate for Board Member Contreras. Would you please lead us in the pledge?
Stand and put your hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Suhail will now provide a safety brief and review evacuation procedures.
In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevators. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building. There is a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you very much. Suhail, do we have any non-agenda public comments today?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Before we proceed, I have a couple of quick protocol items to share. First, I ask board members to please hold your comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. Second, when the time comes for board questions and comments, please raise your hand and wait until you're called upon to speak. The first three items on today's agenda relate to closed session. Lori Winfrey, General Counsel, will now take us into closed session.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. We have three items today, as our board chair noted. All three items are pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D1. The first one, Surface Transportation Board, a declaratory relief matter. The second item is related to the California Coastal Commission versus North County Transit District. And the third item is the Friends of Del Mar Bluffs versus the North County Transit District.
We can now go into closed session.
They come out early. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I can put that on my computer for you. Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Hi, Joe. Good job.
I gotta stop there. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'll be out here.
I went around and turned the lights off. They had on.
Thank you so much.
It was.
Okay, thank you.
Let's do that.
Okay, thanks. Test, 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 test. Can you hear me?
They just need to know. Did Sunil leave her mic?
No.
You can miss one.
I did.
It's still broadcast.
When you were in the hallway, I said test, test, test to see if you could still hear me.
It's so weird, right? Is that one off? Yeah, it's off.
What about the camera? Maybe we need to mute the YouTube.
Camera? Got a
We
mic?
can still hear you. Maybe mute.
If you hear the popping.
Madam Clerk, do we have quorum again?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam General Counsel. Do we have any reportable actions to share from closed session?
No, Board Chair, we had closed session on the 3 items that were noted. Prior to closed session, the board provided me with guidance on all 3 matters, but there's no reportable action.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes for the regular board meeting of May 18th, 2023?
So moved.
Motion by Bat Patel. I believe that second was from White. Please vote.
On the motion of board member, on the motion of Vice Chair Bat Patel, seconded by Board Member White, to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of May 18th. Motion passes.
Thank you. There are 19 items on the consent agenda for action today. Suhail, have any members of the public requested that any consent items be pulled?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. In that case, public registration to speak on consent items is now ended. Do any board members wish to pull any consent items?
Thank you. I don't necessarily need to pull the item, but in reference to the consent item related to NCTD plus performance, forgive me, this is my first time familiarizing myself with this agenda, so I don't see the consent item number. But I just had a question about that item, if I could ask that to staff.
Madam Clerk, what is that item? Do you know?
It's a transit operations performance report.
Okay, that's item 5. Is that
5.
correct?
Okay. Yes, so with that item, I see that there was data available for and information available to know how many downloads of Lyft and Uber were made, right, in the hundreds of downloads. And we saw that there was 1 completed ride with Lyft and Uber. But do we have data available related to the number of ride requests for Lyft and Uber in that program?
How about this, because I see Mr. Orlando trying, okay.
Thank you.
No, the question was related to item 5. And Board Member Melendez, can you repeat the question, please?
Right, so if I understand the item correctly, there's an app pilot program that allows for NCTD users to be able to also access Lyft and Uber services. And we have data on how many downloads there are of the app. We also have data on the number of rides that were completed, which I believe was just 1 ride. But do we have data on how many rides were requested?
We don't. We've requested that from Uber, but we don't have that data. We are aware that there are concerns within that zone that the availability of Uber drivers may be a constraint on that program. And so we're trying to work with Uber to see if that can be addressed and identified. The other thing that we are actively doing right now is we are looking to expand that zone. So to make the zone bigger, to capture additional Sprinter stations, so it could attract more users.
Okay.
So it's sort of a mixed report, because we do know a lot of folks are downloading the coupon, the voucher, but you're absolutely correct. There hasn't been a lot of usage of it.
Right,
really at
because
all.
I see, many downloads versus 1 completed ride, and it sounds like we don't have data on how many rides were requested. So this was really more of a question from our primary board member Contreras, a concern about availability of Uber and Lyft in that Vista area with this, pilot of this initial program. So I fully accept the item. I don't necessarily need to pull it, just kind of wanted more information about what data we do have. Is there a goal of being able to obtain that data in the future?
Yeah, we're working with them. So what happens, functionally the way it works, once you get to the request a ride function, you're actually within the Uber app at that point, and our voucher is in your wallet in that app. And so that's why we don't necessarily have visibility into into the requests. We know, obviously when the voucher's used and who used it and that data, but the request piece is within Uber.
Okay.
So
Great, and I'll just make a final comment that, were we to have that data and kind of see the demand for more flexible ride share options, I think that would even help us to identify opportunities, whether it be as a municipality or, partnership with other agencies to develop certain forms of flexible fleets that, we're not necessarily depending on what the market is able to provide in a limited fashion with Uber and Lyft. It can be very hard to get a ride with Uber and Lyft in Vista. I'm sure in other cities as well. So I just think that data would help us identify opportunities for more fleet options for riders in that final mile.
agree. And just for the board's visibility, we did start last week the onboarding and implementation of our microtransit software platform. So that project is fully underway, which would enable us to do exactly what you're talking about. So we're working on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for that question and comments. With that, may I have a motion to approve the consent items 4 through 22?
So moved.
I'll second. This is Lindsay.
Motion by Vice Chair Bhat Patel, second by Board Member Hensy. Please vote. We have two other business, oh wait.
Madam Chair.
I'll let you.
Thank you.
Yes, please, thank you.
On the motion of Vice Chair Bhat Patel, seconded by Board Member Hensy, to approve consent items 4 through 22, motion passes.
Thank you. I'll be a little more patient. We have two other business items on the agenda today. The first is to authorize the purchase of bi-level coaster cars and locomotives. Graham Blackwell, Chief Operations Officer, Rail, will be presenting this item. Grant, you have our attention.
Thank you, Chair Hudson and members of the board. My name is Graham Blackwell, Chief Operations Officer, Rail here at NCTD, and I'm going to introduce Devin Rouse, NCTD's Rail Strategic Advisor, who'll be presenting on authorized purchase and sale agreement of 5 NCTD bi-level rail cars and the 2 locomotives. All yours, Devin.
All right. Thank you. And can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. Good afternoon. And for this item, thank you for the introduction there, Graham, as well. And I'm going to make this as efficient as we can make it. So if you please go to the next slide, we're going to hit 3 major topics here. First, talk a little bit about the background of why this item's here. Talk about our fleet and current updates to the fleet and procurements that are ongoing right now as we speak. A little bit about our future service and fleet needs in relation to that. And then we'll wrap it up with the discussion item here in the board action and staff recommendation and some of the details related to that. Next slide, please. So first, a little bit of background. As many of you may know, the NCTD coaster fleet has been undergoing quite a change and facelift here in the last several years to its rail fleet. We currently have 7 locomotives in service. 5 of those are Siemens SC44s, and 2 of them are EMD F59s. Yes, Europeans like to name their trains Chargers and other fancy names like Volaro. Here in the US, we like to use random numbers and letters, which is opposite from automobiles. I know that we like names, they like random letters and numbers. So there's your random fact for the day that you can take home with you. In addition to the locomotives, we have 28 bi-level coach cars. 10 of these are cab cars for allowing us to do push-pull operations. Currently, we have 4 locomotives that were just delivered. These are additional Siemens Charger locomotives that are currently undergoing commissioning and testing and arrived here last month. And then expected by the end of this year to start delivery is 11 of the new crash and energy management bi-level coaches, 3 of which will also be full width cab cars that you see there in the picture. So with this, it gives us a fairly updated fleet here. And I'll be honest, working with a lot of railroads over the years, North County is actually probably ahead of the curve in terms of keeping its fleet in a pretty good state of repair and replacing it well before it's past 2 times its useful life, which is probably the average for most railroads. So excellent job there in terms of the industry. But this gives us a total fleet after this acquisition of about 11 locomotives, 26 coaches and 13 cab cars for a total of 39 coaches altogether. So a pretty good fleet. Now, a portion of this new fleet that's being delivered here in this year was actually intended for coaster service expansions. This was intended to happen in 2 phases. The first phase we actually executed in October of 21, going from about 22 to 30 daily weekday trips, with a little bit more on the Fridays and a little less on the weekends. The second phase was actually originally intended to expand that to about 42 daily weekday trips, but that was suspended due to funding shortfalls in the Transnet program. And if you want to go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit more about that. So as it relates to that expansion, our current service levels and fleet needs here for the immediate foreseeable future, North County agreed to cap service expansion after Sandag had identified that funding shortfall. And the graph you see there on the right actually comes from a December presentation back in 2021 that I snagged that does a pretty good job of articulating the primary issue there. You can see about a $936 million shortfall for operating funds for that service expansion. So with that in consideration, the current fleet that we have has more than enough capacity with 7 train sets needed just to meet the current needs and future service needs. And that gives us even a little bit of room for growth and additional capacity and frequency improvements if we want it, without taking away a couple train sets that would be needed for periodic maintenance or even overhaul. So we feel pretty good in terms of the size of the fleet here as we have it today. And with this, in considering what we would need for the immediate future, at least foreseeable future, there's a couple recommendations that the staff would have. First is to really optimize our fleet and minimize our operating and capital costs. To do this, selling the 5 of the oldest, some of the oldest bi-levels that we have would really help us lower our average fleet age and keep our operating costs down and right size our fleet for that matter. And then taking advantage of this unique opportunity that we have given the market and our needs versus what's out there and what's available for other railroads in selling 2 of our locomotives, we really have the ability to take that and potentially invest back into the next generation of fleet needs for North County, which we talked a little bit back in the April 14th board meeting, as we related to zero emissions and our motion towards that. If you recall, for those that you're in this meeting, we have a need to move to a zero emissions rail fleet by 2047 based on the new CARB regulation that's out there. And so while that's not exactly next year, it's going to take quite a bit to get us there, as many of you may recall. And so the investments we can make today will help us make much more efficient use of North County dollars to get us to where we need to be by 2047. In particular, a point that we talked about at the last meeting, or the April meeting, is transitioning the Sprinter fleet, not only to a zero emissions fleet, but also to an FRA compliant fleet that would really allow us to do some interesting things with not only our service, but also interoperate between the Sprinter line, the Escondido sub, and the San Diego sub with Coaster, allowing multiple service options and also right sizing different fleet sizes for different times of the day. So it gives us a lot more options. And as you look at it, yes, we're giving away a couple of our additional spares, if you will, on the heavy side. But as we move towards this transition to Sprinter, it really allows us much more flexibility in terms of operations and right sizing our service needs in the future. So the earlier we can get to that, the better. And as many as you know, the Sprinter itself, it's a very unique vehicle. It's the only one of its kind here in the US. It's based off of the European platform. Even though it's not quite at the same age as our original bi-level fleet, it still has even more difficulties associated with it, being that it's so unique. Obsolescence is one. It's much more complicated than just a coach car. It's got its own drive system, its own cab. Essentially, it is a locomotive as far as the FRA is concerned. So there's a lot more technology on it than you would have in a traditional coach that's hauled by a locomotive. So obsolescence is an issue. and the availability of parts and the supply chain that backs up those parts has become increasingly frustrating, I guess I would say, for some of those in the room that have been dealing with it. So those two factors really drive to high costs and low reliability. And so that's only going to continue to go down, to exasperate as the fleet gets older. So we think this is an opportunity to really start driving in that investment that we talked about with the zero emissions, leveraging that and some potential investment opportunities with grants to really move towards replacing that Sprinter fleet as a priority in our program over the next couple of years, or several years for that matter. Next slide. Okay, now we'll talk a little bit about the basis for what the proposal is in front of you in terms of the board action. First, the sale of the 5 bi-level vehicles we have. These have far outreached their useful life. They're some of the oldest that we have in the system. They were placed back in 95, placed in the service back when the service started in 95. They are well past the 25-year mark, a useful life mark that we have, with 28 years currently on them. There's really not a big market for these. You kind of have to sell them to somebody that either already operates bi-level cars or at a minimum has low-level platforms. So not too many takers out there in terms of resale value. And if you look at although we paid about $1.5 million back in 95 for them, based on our experience, the recovery value wouldn't be very high for these. And so looking at comparisons to our CNG buses, you're looking at about 0.5%, 2%, puts us somewhere in the ballpark of $7,500 to $30,000 per bi-level. And just based on the shipping cost alone, which, based off, if you consider how much we paid to have the recent locomotives shipped, around just over $200,000 from Sacramento, trying to ship these anywhere significantly over the country, you're looking at more money for shipping costs than we would probably recover for scrap value or anybody else that's willing to take them. The fact that UTA is kind of in a unique situation. They already have a bi-level fleet, but they also have some single levels. This allows them to kind of right size and expand their capacity by getting rid of the single levels and also harmonizing their fleet with a bi-level fleet. So it's a bit of a unique opportunity here, and so we think it's well worth the value. These cars have not been overhauled yet, and so it allows us to save the capital cost there and put this money back into something else, which we'll talk about in a little bit here in the future. Next slide. Locomotives. The 2 locomotives we have, and the funding for these, we'll talk a little bit more about restrictions for the funding on the next slide here, but these were not purchased with federal or CARB funds or SANDAG funds for expansion. The locomotives were just delivered here on May 7th, as we talked about. They're currently undergoing commissioning and testing right now. Paid about $15.5 for these, for the locomotives themselves, not including an extra $500,000 for NCT variables that we've put on PTC and other items. The current market price for one of these, for a new diesel electric passenger locomotive in general, is running about $8 to $10 million. There's not a lot of options out there, so you're going to wait for one if you want one. Either you have to get to the back of the line or somewhere close to the back of the line if you want a charger, or you're going to have somebody restart a production line, because currently those are the only ones with a hot production line at the moment. So you could be looking at about 48 months easily to get one, and that's probably pretty aggressive even as it is. So we think there's a good market. We've got we'll still have an entirely Tier 4 fleet. This allows us to have 2 supplemental units, 2 additional units that we don't really need. We can get those out on a hot market and really maximize those dollars to go back and do investments in the fleet here for future needs here instead. So if you'd go to the next slide, please. What we potentially do, where would these sale proceeds go? Some considerations here. First, again, we talked a little bit about funding sources, the restrictions associated with the bi-levels. They're really the $1 million or expected $1 million proceeds could really be used at NCTD's discretion for either operation or capital. There's no major restrictions on those dollars. Potential use for that could be anywhere for matching funds for a grant to convert one of our Sprinter train sets to a battery electric prototype, for example, getting us a head start and figuring out what to do with that Sprinter corridor and investing there. With the locomotive proceeds, it's a little bit more complicated. We've got three different considerations. About $2.5 million of the sale was funded by TDA funds that could be reprogrammed for North County for any capital project. 13 million, however, came from state rail assistant funds that would require us to be reprogramming them to capital projects directly benefiting commuter service, so the coaster service. And then any profit from the sale could actually be used for anything in NCTD's discretion for operating or capital. Potential uses there, again, we could use it as matching funds to get a grant to procure a zero emissions locomotive prototype, design engineering for some infrastructure related needs or modifications. And for the non-SRA funds, we could use those to again, cover potentially a second Sprinter train set conversion or any number of issues that are related to the coaster. I'm just going to point out, these are just ideas, to kind of get everybody thinking about what we could do to maximize these investments there. As you can see, I've tried to gear them towards leveraging grants and funding programs. I think North County is in a unique position. If we get out early here, there will be several grants and funding opportunities to look at some of the things that we're doing that will help us not only transition to zero emissions, but also at the same time update our Sprinter service, as we've talked about before. So leveraging these funds will help us get ahead, potentially be very competitive for some of those grants. So it's sort of a unique opportunity here, and I think we should certainly take advantage of it if we can. And with that, I will go to the last slide, if you would. So this is the recommendation in front of you with the memo that you have. Three major items here, and that's to authorize the executive director with the concurrence of the general counsel to first finalize the negotiations of the purchase and sale agreement of the 5 bi-level rail cars to UTA at a sale of about $2,000 per vehicle for about a total of $1 million. Second would be to approve the sale of 2 of our Siemens charger locomotives to the California State Department of Rail and Mass Transportation or Southern California Rail Authority, which is Metrolink. In the event that we cannot complete that sale, to approve the solicitation of purchase proposals and advanced negotiations with any interested parties with the intent to execute a purchase and sale agreement for those 2 locomotives with whoever the successful proposer would be. And 3, to direct the staff to reserve those sale proceeds for project development and implementation of our zero emissions rail technologies. So I know that was a lot. Try to do it pretty quickly. It's getting late here on the East Coast. The natives are getting restless. So more than happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you. Before we move to board questions, I will ask and Graham, do you have anything to say?
Oh, nothing additional.
Okay, thank you. Suhel, do we have any public comments on this item?
We have a public speaker, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Please call the speaker.
Mr. Quirk, are you online?
I am online. I'm here to speak on item number 24, the budget.
Mr. Quirk, you have 3 minutes.
Excuse me, this is item 23?
I'm here to speak on the budget, number 24.
Okay, so we have no speakers on item 23, is that correct?
No speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move to board questions and comments, and I actually have a couple of questions, but I'll let you guys start. Board Member Drucker.
Thank you very much for the presentation. The 2 EMD locomotives, those are going to be replaced by 2 Siemens at this point. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what I thought. So we have 2 extra Siemens is really what we.
That's correct. Correct.
Okay. If there are any problems with the the new Siemens that we have, one breaks down, it's in an accident, do we have backup to make sure that we continue to provide all of the services that we can provide?
Yes, we went through a pretty extensive discussion and analysis, and this includes the ability for us to be able to do overhauls. So from time to time, trains will rotate out of service, so we feel confident with that.
And are we giving any guarantee to UTA about these bi-level?
Absolutely not. They're as is.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, that was my question. But my other part of that question was the EMD F59PHI, I believe. What tier of emissions tier?
Tiered what?
Tier 0.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're replacing those with chargers, which are tier 4,
That's correct.
correct? Awesome, thank you. And, okay, any possibility, Mr. Tucker, do you think, in your wildest dreams, of SANDAG identifying funding and the shortfall being reversed to allow us to expand?
No, not in the near term. I think it would be a new sales tax that would have to come in place before SANDAG would have additional funding to support the operations. But again, as I think you also noted in the presentation, that we analyzed that with the fleet that will remain, we will be able to do further expansion should those funding become available.
Okay, and then this gives us an opportunity to, excuse me, move forward to maybe things that are even better than tiers 4, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, do I have a motion to approve other business item 23?
So moved.
Motion by Hensy,
Second.
second by Bhat Patel. Please vote. And thank you for the presentation, Devin and Graham.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final, sorry.
On the motion of Board Member Hensy, seconded by Vice Chair Bhat Patel, to authorize the purchase and sale agreement of 5 NCTD bi-level cars and 2 locomotives, motion passes.
Thank you. Our final discussion item relates to the FY 2024 operating budget and capital improvement program. As you may recall, the proposed operating budget has been thoroughly reviewed over the past months by the PAF committee, board members, and staff. Yoon Park Lynch, our Chief Financial Officer, will now present an overview of the FY 2024 operating budget and capital improvement program for consideration and final adoption today. Yoon, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, board members. Can we go to the first slide, please? Today, we are requesting the board to close the public hearing for the proposed budget. During the last few months, the NCTD board and committees have received a few briefings from staff, from the executive committee to the PAF on the proposed operating and capital budget. We posted our budget document for public review on May 31st. It was made available at our transit centers as well as our general administrative office. And today we have received 7 public comments on our proposed budget. The deliverables that we will be requesting the board to approve today include the document of the operating budget for FY24, as well as the FY 2024 to FY 2028 capital improvement program. We are also requesting approval of the FY 24 represented and non-represented employee classification and compensation schedules, the FY 24 cost recovery fee schedule, as well as the FY 24, FY 2033 service implementation plan. Next slide, please. The NCT staff provided a detail of the different revenue assumptions as well as expense assumptions in the FY24 budget in our May 18, 2023 presentation to the board. Our proposed budget that we are presenting today has remained the same. There are no changes in those assumptions. We are also reflecting the in-house transition of maintenance away, maintenance signals, and facility maintenance that is going to occur late this month. We have a total balanced budget where expenses and revenues equal $185.85 million. And the payments for pension and funded liability, as well as our payments on the Sprint debt, are not included in the budget since those are paid from our net assets. We are also incorporating in our budget for the in-house or the resumption for direct operations of Breeze, Lift, and Flex. Back on our December 15 meeting with NCD Board of Directors, we provided a business justification for the insourcing of these activities. This will help increase accountability to the residents of North County, our customers, and the board for providing a positive customer transit experience. It will also help retain experienced and qualified workforce, as well as promote stability through permanency, consistent training, and updating of skills. And also, it will assist NCD in enhancing our focus on safety, execution, and employee engagement, implementation of standard operating procedures, and also having best practices on the delivery of our zero delay initiative. Subsequently, also on the December 15 meeting, we requested the board to allow the in-housing of bus operations by July 1st, 2027, if we could demonstrate having a balanced operating budget for the next 5 years. Within the proposed 5-year plan that is included in a proposed budget, we have demonstrated that we can achieve those 5-year balanced budget. And also, we are also assuming that the insourcing will occur on July 1st, 2026, with an option that potentially it could be delayed to July 1st, 2027. However, in our 5-year plan, in our budget document, the transition is reflected in fiscal year 2027. The table shown in this slide summarizes our proposed operating budget for the FY 2024 fiscal year. As you can see, our total revenues equal our total expenses, and we are demonstrating a balanced operating budget. Within our 5-year plan, this reflects the forecasted revenues and expenses in the next 5 years. It makes a representation of how those fundings are going to be allocated within our capital improvement program for operating expenses, as well as in the future capital needs. The transition for bus operations is reflected in fiscal year 2027. As you can see, from the 5-year total, we're able to achieve both a balanced operating and capital budget. And any long-term obligations related to our Sprint debt and our pension liability, those are funded from our net assets. This table summarizes our constrained capital improvement program. It is the planned expenditures of capital investments in the next 5 years. It shows where our dollars are going to be programmed based on activity line items. As you can see, most of our investments are in replacement of bus and rail rolling stock, as well as improvements on the right-of-way. This capital improvement program also reflects the commitments that we have made on the projects related to the TSEP program projects, which includes the Convention Center platform, San Diego double track, which was part of the program projects that was awarded to SANDA and NCTD by the state. Our total CIP for the next 5 years is going to total $106.7 million. On here, we are also, as part of the documents that we're requesting approval from our board, is our employee classification and compensation schedule. All employees within NCTD are classified within a specific category, depending on the level of responsibility as well as the scope of work. It's used as a guideline to determine applicant qualifications for positions, as well as establishing comparability and setting salary ranges. The schedules have been separated this year based on our represented and non-represented employees. Our represented employees are, those compensations are determined based on collective bargaining agreements. The detail of different classifications are included as attachments 24D and then 24E to this agenda item. The proposed company fee schedule is also a document that is part of the budget adoption process. The cost recovery fee schedule provides the cost that NCD charges third party for providing certain services. By state law, we are limited to recover actual costs.
Next slide, please. So we are requesting our board, the board action for today is to close the public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2024 operating budget and the fiscal year 2024-2028 capital improvement program. We are also requesting board action on staff recommendations to adopt the proposed budget as well as the capital improvement program, to also approve the proposed employee classification and compensation schedules and the cost recovery fee schedule and the service implementation plan, and also authorize NCD staff to perform the phased resumption of direct operations and maintenance for Breeze, Lift, and Flex by July 1st, 2027. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Before we move to board questions, Will, do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a public speaker on Zoom. Mr. Clerk, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Is it possible for you to pull up the written comment that I submitted? It has some visual charts that I'd like to share and speak to.
Mr. Clerk, your charts and comments were sent to the board already, so we are aware of them. If you could just please take your 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to me today. I did review the budget documents. I've gone back and researched a lot of history, and the written document that I submitted to the board, you can see the history of the operating losses for the NCTD going back to 2005. They went from 59 million to a projected 220 million roughly, and that's including depreciation, which is frequently not included in some of the public presentations from the NCTD. So it represents a huge increase in operating losses over the last 15 or 20 years. Most of that increase in the loss, this is the second chart that I included, is related to an increase in the operating expenses. The actual operating revenues, and by that I mean to things like fares have been very low. They've typically been 10 to 20% of the total operating expenses. So the huge increase in expenses over the last few years, and really the last 15 or so years, has been related to an increase in expenses, not the decline in revenue that we've seen with other transit agencies. Further on in my comment, I included the trends for the ridership of the 3 major modes: the Breeze bus system, the Sprinter, and the Coaster. The bus system had lost several thousand daily rides from 2005 to 2019. That excludes any impact from the pandemic. And then they lost several thousand more. All told, over the last 15 years, the bus system has lost 15,000 daily rides. It's a decline from about 27,000 one-way trips per day to 12,000. That translates to over 5 million rides per year. And again, the NCTD has been spending a huge amount of money in the context of this declining ridership. Further down, I include the long-term ridership trends of the Coaster. From 2014 to 2019, again, excluding the impact of the pandemic, ridership was down about 21%, and then they're still down another 50% or so since the pandemic, with very little in the way of robust recovery to anything close to what we were at the pre-pandemic level. That decline represents close to 1 million trips per year, about 2,500 one-way trips per day. And then finally, to wrap up, the Sprinter saw a decline of about 13% or so from 2015 to 2019. That's over 1,000 one-way daily trips per day. And then they're still down another 50% or so. So that translates to a daily loss of 4,000 one-way trips, or about 1.5 million annually. So when we're looking at the budget discussion today, approving the budget for 2024, and it includes a significant increase in expenses and a projected operating loss, I'm asking the question, why? How can the NCTD be spending so much money year after year, seeing large declines in all of its major service modes? At some point, something needs to change. So I am recommending that the board not approve the budget today and demand more accountability for these results. And specifically, I think there needs to be a separation between the 3 modes: the bus, the Sprinter, and the Coaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Your time is ended. The board's heard your comments. Sunil, do we have any more comments today?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. You, excellent presentation as always. I remember well the robust public support offered when the board authorized resumption of direct operations and maintenance for Breeze, Lift, and Flex. I was pretty impressed that day. It was very special and wonderful to hear all the positive comments and nice affirmations of the board's unanimous decision. So thank you for that. With that, I'll move on to take any questions and comments. I'll start at this end, Vice Chair Patel.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for the presentation. And I know that we've had this conversation a couple of times, so it's great to be here again. And just a few things from my city. I know one thing I just wanted to mention on, I think it was on page 480 of the PDF and 96 of the proposed budget. I just wanted to ask if we could revise the listing of the unfunded 80 million for the Carlsbad Village double tracking to, it's supposed to be 551 million for Carlsbad Village trench and double tracking. So I just wanted to flag that.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing, this is just more, I think you all have been having conversations with our staff, but just more for the public's pleasure. I know as a reminder, our staff has been recommending to NCTD and Sandag staff to consider studying the effectiveness of EV public transit rideshare programs. And just so that way it can meet not only our jurisdiction's goals, but of course the transit agency's goals. And then of course, as we continue to move forward, propose budget accordingly in both, comments to Sandag on the regional plan, and of course, most recently on the North County Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. So I just wanted to put that into the record as well, that I know you all are chatting about that and looking forward to seeing good things come out of that. Other than that, supportive and looking forward to adopting it today.
Thank you. Board Member Drucker.
I have a whole lot of comments here, so I hope you'll bear with me. First of all, Dan Quirk does not represent the city of Del Mar on this issue whatsoever. The city of Del Mar has specifically told them that we do not agree with this analysis. And I realize that the staff has taken a whole lot of time to respond to his comments. And I will make two comments on that. One is you can respond all you want to Dan Quirk about this. He has made up his mind. He has taken statistics, and he does not want to hear the rationale for why the statistics are the way they are. You're not going to change his mind. Number two, you're talking to him and not the 300, 400, 500 people that he's emailing, that are reading his emails, and you're not responding to them. So I would strongly suggest that if you need backup from the board, to not spend any more time responding to him. I'd be more than happy to, but to treat him as, Dan, we disagree with what you say, and move on, because it is a huge waste of your time to do that. Now, there is though one kernel of truth that Dan has, and some of the people that wrote in. And that is the paradigm that we have taken is that we believe that once we can create a transit network that up to maybe 20, 25% of the people can use on a regular basis, we will be in good shape. Unfortunately, we don't have such a transit network today, and we are working on that. But at some time, we're going to have, and this will be long after I am off this board, and probably all the members here are off this board. And Matt, you may not even be executive director at that time, which you'd probably be happy about. But at some point, if that paradigm is incorrect, even though we create a transit network that can serve up to 20, 25% of the people on a regular basis, and people are not taking transit, then we need to make, then that board will have to make a decision about that. Again, that's a long way away. That isn't a decision that we need to make today because again, we do not have that transit. So. Stop in Del Mar. Excuse me. We do have a couple stops in Del Mar, but again, just going back to Dan's analysis for just a second. The analysis says that 2% of people use transit for their transportation needs. Well, so the concept is, and this goes to your comment, Jim. Yesterday, I walked up to go get a coffee. Well, that's considered a trip. There's no way I can take a bus or a transit for 1 block or 2 blocks to use transit. So the metric that we are supposed to be looking at is how many people are regularly using transit? What percent of the population? And that's the number that we need to be working on. So back to the budget. I do approve. I think it's great. I think we're doing a good job. I really was impressed by the budget document that I read, which was, I haven't read one in 4 years or so. So this was much better. I really appreciate all the history, et cetera, of that. The couple comments I would make on it. One is the mission statement again, I believe is too wordy. It does not, and it needs to be, made more economical so that a person out in the field can say, without having to call a supervisor, this is what I need to do. The other thing I would mention is I think we have way too many goals. We are trying to get to 0 delay, and there's a whole lot of goals. Everybody's got a whole lot of stuff, and what I'm worried about is with all these goals, none of them will be met. And so the idea is, I believe we need to reduce the numbers of goals so that we can make sure that we're meeting them and on a timely basis. So some of them need to be met, some of them can be, so we can again meet those goals. And I think that's really important. Otherwise, I'm really happy with the way this budget has turned out. I'm really happy that we have balanced it. That we're able to continue to provide service to people that need service in our area. And again, echoing what Jules said, when I left the board in 2008, we were in-house. It made sense at that point to go out-house, but now it is making sense to bring it back in. And I'm really happy that we're able to show that we can do that in a fiscally responsible way.
That wasn't too terribly long. Okay, moving down the dais, are there any questions or comments with that? No.
I do.
Okay, please, Mr. White.
And I apologize if staff had already addressed some of Dan's comments, but I would like it addressed here because I do find some of this concerning. So one of the things that he stated was, since 2005, annual operating losses have exploded from 59 million to an estimated 220 million for 2024, and that the cumulative operating losses since 2005 will total more than 2.6 billion.
So included in, I guess this staff did provide a response.
And I apologize.
No. So because it came out right as the board meeting was beginning. So this was a comment that Board Member Quirk had previously raised. And we did not create new work because we had specifically already addressed it in voluminous detail. And so what I would say to you is to take a look at the attachments that were included in our response. There was a fundamental misunderstanding on his part from an accounting perspective and how he classified it. And what I would also suggest to you, should you have any additional questions after you look at it, feel free to reach out to me or Yoon. In the course of us responding to that, we both tag team with Yoon, of course, explaining the accounting perspective and the accounting standards for which we operate, and us explaining kind of the whole business imperative of this. If we were we're at the tune of what he was saying, we wouldn't be existing, we wouldn't be in this meeting today.
Understood. And I'll look for those attachments. I apologize, I didn't see them.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Weiss, Director Weiss.
And my question is kind of related to the speaker, but a little bit different. As I look at the summary, so the in-house, the transfer to in-house, I had thought was going to be like neutral. But when I look at the 2022 budget, it was a total of 131 million. The 2024 proposed is 185, so that's a difference of about $50 million. And it looks like the professional services went up and the purchase transportation went down a little bit, but there seems to be a significant increase in salaries and wages. Is there like a simple answer for that?
Can we put that up?
Thanks, Mom. There you go.
So when the transition occurred, we went through two phases. The first phase was insourcing of rail operations or rail maintenance that happened in fiscal 2022. And then the second transition FY 2023 was a transition for rail operations and maintenance. The transition for in-housing maintenance away, maintenance of Cena facility, that is in FY 2024. The increase in salaries and wages is offset by the decrease in operating expenses related to purchase transportation and professional services. So when we did the cost neutrality, what we did is that we compared what was the cost of having those as employees versus the dollars that we're paying our contractors for those headcounts. So there's an increase on one side, but there's a decrease on the other side.
But it wasn't a corresponding dollar for dollar.
It was cost neutral.
And here's the complexity when you look at that. So on one element of cost as it relates to the labor, it was neutral. The scope of the work that we may do will vary from one year to another year. The level of effort, and I'll give a nebulous example, graffiti abatement and tree trimming. Those costs were in bundled contracts historically, which meant, the contractor was supposed to perform them. One of the reasons that we were recommending insourcing was that a lot of that work was not actually occurring. And so you see more manifestation of real costs to achieve the real outcomes of maintenance that we want to achieve, but you still correct in stating that the apples to apples comparison of the people is a cost neutral endeavor for us. And what is hard about this, and I know you know this, and being a former city manager, the scope of what we may be doing it varies from one year to another year in terms of professional services. We could have a major tire replacement project or a new operating cost that manifests itself like positive train control that we just have to offset with no new revenue coming in. Those things are always happening from one year to the next year. But from a practical perspective, the labor cost from here to there is cost neutral.
The 50 million over 2 years just seems kind of significant. And I just want to clarify on the capital budget that the projects that we are being asked to vote on today is for the state of good repair projects only. It's not including double tracking and tunnels and grade separated crossings.
Right, well, so
they're constrained.
Yeah, primarily almost all of the NCTD's projects are state of good repair projects. There are times though that we do contribute funding towards projects like the stabilization project, like the convention center project, where there are 5307 or 5337, sorry for the jargons, of dollars that we receive, but not for double tracking projects. Thank you.
Questions answered? Anything else from anyone? No? Okay. With that, may I have a motion to approve other business item 24? Huh? Are there any other public speakers before we close the hearing?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. With that, May I have a motion to approve other business item 24?
So moved.
Motion by Drucker,
Second.
second by Jenkins. Everyone, please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Druper, seconded by Board Member Jenkins, to conduct a public hearing and close the public hearing and adopt FY 2024 operating budget and FY 2024 to 2028 capital improvement program, and approve the FY 2024 to 2023 service implementation plan. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. This brings us to the Executive Director's report. Mr. Tucker, do you have anything interesting to report today?
Because not interesting, I can't say it. Well, first, I do want to thank the board for its approval of the budget. I also want to take note of the second part of that was the authorization to resume direct operations of Breeze. A lot of the people that are in the room today are directly impacted by this. And what I really do want to convey to the board is something most of those people sitting in those seats know, because we talk a lot and collaborate a lot, is you should be exceedingly proud of this workforce for their willingness to collaborate with us and work together in very constructive and positive ways. We just resumed, it was 3 weeks ago, our typically pre-COVID-19 monthly to quarterly meetings on Saturdays, where we talk about partnership and how we work through issues in a proactive way to grow ridership. And it would be kind of a sign for all of you all to listen to kind of the positive atmosphere that exists and the thought process from these employees about how we do better. How do we take care of our customers? How do we take care of each other? How we work outside of the box in a very, very collaborative way. So I do want to mention that we work closely together, work closely as partners. And, you know, it is an important moment because it was painful when we outsourced. Absolutely painful. And I'll just keep reminding people until the day I die, you won't find a union or a set of employees that would do the votes that these employees did in a very short period of time. They voted to defer their salary increases as step one. And then they voted to be outsourced and to lose their pension and suffer wage reductions. And at the same time, they kept a very positive attitude and spirit of collaboration. We continued our dialogue because one of the commitments from the board at that time was that we were going to continue to do right by them and try to improve their benefits. I think we lived up to that. And we also said at that time, if we could continue to work hard and if we were able to resume direct operations, we would, and we're doing that. So much appreciated, total team effort in terms of how we get here, and I'm very confident that in the future, there are going to be challenges. But I think with that kind of approach, attitude, we can work through those challenges. So wanted to say thank you to you all for the work that you guys do, the support that you provide, and always willing to lead into things that I ask you to do. So much appreciated. Second item I do want to mention, there's a couple items. So Bataquitos, we were recommended to receive $103 million for the Bataquitos project from the state of California. This grant will fully fund that project. I just do want to make a note. You know, this is a project in Carlsbad. This is a state of good repair project for North County Transit District. So when we receive these types of grants for these double tracking, this is not the case of building a brand new rail line. We were going to have it to repair this 100-plus-year-old bridge project. So it is an amazing and wonderful moment anytime that we receive a grant that fully funds a project with no local match. The other priority that I did want to just also let you guys know about and just mention again is that we were fortunate on the San Diego Bridge project, which is the first phase if there's ever going to be a realignment project, which is the Fairgrounds project, that we, NCTD submitted a grant application under the TRCP program, and that we were awarded $100 million for that project. We've submitted an additional grant application to the Federal Railroad Administration for the remaining $130 million. We're hoping to hear sometime prior to the end of the year about that application, which I think definitely gets a big boost when they already know that the local match is in place. So very, very good news for us in terms of us advancing two significant state of good repair and capacity enhancing projects. I'll just note that with the funding that we already have, we're in a position in the future to be able to have a new convention center in downtown San Diego platform. And with the funding that I'm really confident that we're going to get for San Diego is a single stop, one seat ride to the fairgrounds in the future. So really good progress in terms of meeting our state of good repair needs and at the same time supporting future ridership growth and development. The last 2 points that I'll mention is General Counsel is going to be going out on vacation next week. So she has requested that you guys each send her at least 10 emails a day and make at least 5 phone calls. So you are out on vacation from when? 19th through the 27th. I think I know I've communicated to the board members that I'm going on vacation. I want to see who read my email closely. If you did, you will know where I'm going on my vacation. No, see, if you had read all the way to the bottom of my email, if you read how I signed off, I did it both in English and in another language. There you go. I'm going to Italy, so there will be some level of complexity. I've identified in a follow-up email the NCTV staff that will be in charge during my absence. I'll work out a couple of days for Supervisor Desmond to be on charge on July 3rd. And who was the other person?
No one volunteered.
But that concludes my report.
Arrivederci.
Yes.
Thank you. Sure.
On the San Diego stop, you mentioned the fairground. Is that going to be seasonal for the fair and races or race season or what? How's that?
Yeah, it's been described as a seasonal platform, but I don't think it makes.
I'm just asking.
No. It's been described as, but my recommendation is going to be that it becomes a daily use platform. I think there's opportunities
It sounds like it's not seasonal.
Well, again, I said my recommendation is something like that.
So, but I guess I'm confused then. Is it seasonal or is it going to be?
Well, it's primarily for special events.
Okay.
And I think depending upon what happens in terms of development around the fairgrounds, that it could easily shift to needing to be a daily stop.
Okay, but initially for now, it's seasonal.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think one important thing is that there's pretty serious discussion, and I think that maybe I'll toss this football to you, Dave, or Director.
There is more than serious discussion about affordable housing at the fairgrounds. And so if that happens, then it makes sense. There may be more than just special events. But it is most likely going to happen.
Stay tuned on that one, everyone. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, quick one. That's exciting news about the Bataquitos Bridge replacement project. Will there be any pedestrian or bike infrastructure included as part of that rebuild?
Let me check and we'll respond back formally. I don't believe it is, but let me check.
It would certainly be nice if there was. I mean, looking at what's happening, with the San Elijo Bridge undercrossing, that was part of the Build MCC project. It's been very well loved by the community already and adopted, and this is a super wonderful thing to see. So maybe it can happen. If not now, in the future.
How about finishing the rail trail along the Sprinter?
That could happen too. Okay, so any directors have anything to report? Director Drucker.
Thank you. I was joined by Kelly and Katie at the CalCCA convention on, that's why I was not here at the last meeting. But one of the things that was brought up in that is CCAs are probably going to get involved in hydrogen energy because hydrogen energy is not regulated by the PUC. So strongly suggest that we have some good conversations with CEA, the Clean Energy Alliance, and because we may be able to help NCTD with hydrogen.
And just a quick response. So what I'm going to make sure we do is come back with an update with some of the discussions that we're having around the hydrogen from a fueling perspective.
Terrific. Any other board? Director Weiss?
Just a question. You said you're fully funded for the bridge replacement project?
For the Bataguitos.
So what environmental document and what permitting authorities do you have to go through?
So the project actually within the world is just shovel ready. So the Sandex should be able to move that project rapidly through whatever remaining process is out there. I'll get you the specific detail, but we had a number of projects like Bataquitos and like San Diego that were shovel-ready projects and that we wanted to prioritize receiving money.
So they don't need to go through the special coastal permit?
They've already.
Okay, in addition to being chair of NCTD, I have the privilege and honor to also be chair of LOSAN, appointed by NCTD as our rep, and wanted to just provide a little bit of an update regarding the situation in San Clemente. So I think everyone knows the tracks remain closed at this point. BNSF is moving freight slowly, 10 miles an hour through that area. And they're working on solutions right now, constructing, OCTA is continuing to coordinate with Metrolink and the city of San Clemente on next steps to stabilize the hillside at Casa Romantica. And the effort will likely include designing and constructing a soldier pile barrier wall to protect the track from additional debris within the right of way that's owned by OCTA. Metrolink has also begun the process of procuring a contractor and expects to select the vendor next week. So we hope to have it back open soon and hoping it will stay open because it's pretty impactful. I mean, 60% of LOSAN's ridership is LA to San Diego. So it's very important that this gets back open for, tourism, economy, not just the freight. And slowing down the freight is not great because it backs up the port if they're running slower. So that's my little mini report on LOSAN. Sudhel, do we have any remaining public comments today?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Registration to make public comments is now ended. Thank you, everyone. The next scheduled meeting will be the Rail Safety and Community Enhancement meeting on June 30th, 2023 at 11 a.m. Then the Marketing, Service Planning, and Business Development Committee meeting on June 30th, 2023 at 2 p.m. And our regular board meeting, July 20th, 2023 at 2 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.